He's crazy like Jack Bauer. His name is Forrest Power. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, YouTube. So, here we are, drifting on a rotating rock through space. Sounds kind of freaky when you put it like that, but that is the reality that we face up to every day. Simulation games such as The Sims have always been known as sandbox games because it's pretty much like the entire universe has been dumped into a sandbox. And is our reality much different to that? We've got our little planet Earth that's populated with life, but as far as we can see, there is no other life in the universe or nothing that we have discovered so far. So, to me at least, it seems like our version of reality kind of does reflect that of The Sims in several ways, and that's a pretty scary prospect. So, today guys, I'm going to go deep, because we're talking about whether or not life is actually some form of computer simulation. For centuries now, people have debated about things such as heaven and hell, the universe, the origin of everything, the Big Bang, and let's face it, we've really got no further with our research. No one, despite thousands of years on this planet, has conclusively come up with the answer as to why we are here, what comes after this life, what came before this life. And that's not to mention the prospect of there being life on other planets. Does it not seem strange to you guys that up till this point we have not found another planet with some kind of life on it? It almost seems as though like the computer program has kind of run out of RAM or something like that, and that would also kind of buy into this idea of computer simulation and life being one giant sim. Now, people will scoff at this concept and talk about the fact that it sounds like something that's just been drawn up out of some retarded science fiction film, but for me it's as plausible as anything else. People talk about faith and people talk about believing in kind of the concept of heaven and hell. Atheists talk about the need for scientific proof before they'll actually commit to believing anything. But if we're all honest about the situation, we are just shooting in the dark, and every person's theories about the origins of life are pretty much as valid as the next person's. I'd love actually to sit down with a priest and talk to them on a one-to-one basis about why they have such faith in the concept of heaven and hell based on a dusty book that was written, some 2,000 and odd years ago. And I do find it quite fascinating that these people are willing to literally give their lives to something that they believe in. And there's a strong possibility that they could have it all wrong, but I kind of respect, the idea that your beliefs are so unwavering that you would just literally offer your life up to them. Some people might call that silly, but I've got to kind of respect that as a standpoint on life, really. Now, the entire kind of computer simulation debate was broken open and brought back to the mainstream media by none other than our resident Tesla guru, Elon Musk, and he's talked about this notion that life is nothing more than a glorified computer simulation many times throughout the press. Elon Musk is one of the cleverest people on the planet, and his brain is something to be marvelled at, and it's certainly something that's far larger than my own. So, for that reason, when Elon Musk says that there is an incredibly strong chance that we're already living in some form of computer simulation, I sit up and listen to that because I respect the guy's intelligence. When you think about it logically, though, it's not that far-fetched, really. I mean, technology is advancing all the time. Every day, every week, every month, every year, we are progressing more and more as a human species. You know, you look at kind of like Pong from the 1970s and 80s, and that was as advanced as video games were back then. Fast forward to now, and you look at something like Warzone, which we're watching currently, guys, and you've got 150 people across the world in different kind of time zones a lot of the time, playing simultaneously on a first-person shooter that requires connections to be on the money because literal millisecond decisions can decide whether or not you live or die on these games. So the world of computers and simulations and things like that have come a very, very long way in a short period of time. We are undoubtedly living through, one of the boom periods of humanity. Think about the fact that, like I say, we've been here for thousands of years, and yet over the last 30, we've made such rapid and sustained progress. Now, apply that to the next 1,000 years of human life if we make it that far. Think how much progress we are going to make in that time period. Virtual reality is now on the rise too, guys, and that could mean that within a period of 50 to 100 years, I can't really put a time scale on it, but certainly somewhere in the future, humanity will invent something, some kind of simulation that becomes indistinguishable from real life. You only need to kind of open your media sources on the internet to see things like this are already ushering their way into the limelight with the likes of deepfakes that have become really kind of topical and controversial in the last few years. So, if we accept that technology will continue to progress, and we give humanity a long enough time scale, and it's a given that the planet isn't destroyed by some asteroid or some crazy virus that takes over the world, then it's kind of inevitable that we will reach a point whereby we will be able to simulate real life perfectly. And here comes the bit that's hard to wrap your head around. If we are saying that there is even a possibility that this will happen in the future, and we've already established that there is, what's to say that we are not already living in part of a computer simulation that has been propagated by beings that have come further in this existence than ourselves? That's a bit of a mind-boggling prospect if you ask me, guys. So, as I have reflected on this crazy notion quite a lot over the years, it started to make me think about humanity in terms of computing. And if you think about it, the human body does work a lot like a CPU. Getting knocked out in a fight, for example, is just like hitting the restart button. And our body is made up of loads of little organs that work together in the same way that computer parts do. Clearly, every computer needs a processing unit to make it function properly, and that would be our brains. There's not that many radical differences between the human body and computers. The unfortunate part of this reflection, though, hit me when I realised that if all that human beings are is literally like a computer, then what happens when computers, in air quote marks, die? Well, they just kind of sit there on your shelf dormant and not a great deal happens to them, and that would destroy the notion of people's beliefs about heaven and hell. So it's a pretty grim line when it comes to death, though. PCs that are no longer in use just lay there dormant But you know what I will say is that we're not completely identical to robots. We do have, or computers rather, we do have emotions, we do have feelings, we do have, you know, a lot of abstract things available to us that make us different to machines. Now, I'm well aware that this idea of life being nothing more than a giant computer simulation borrows straight from some kind of weird sci-fi film like The Matrix. But a lot of plausible things from life have come from the world of fantasy, and I don't think this is any less plausible or less likely than anything else that other people believe. And I'm a firm believer that people should back themselves and come to their own understanding of what this life is, because no one actually really knows. However, what I would like to kind of finish this commentary by saying is that my stance on the bigger picture is that I can't control the universe. I can't even control my town. I can't even control my street, which in the grand scheme of things, you know, is an amoeba on the blueprint of existence itself. So even though it's fun sometimes to reflect on these bigger concepts in life, these bigger issues, you've just got to kind of focus on yourself. Whether or not we are living in a computer simulation, whether or not there is a heaven or a hell waiting for us after this life, whether there is, you know, a God, whether there is some kind of being that's waiting to greet us into something after we meet our end in this world, is really like neither here nor there. My focus in life, and I'd hope most people's focus, is to live a long and fruitful life that benefits people around us. And I think that's a far more productive way of living your life, rather than worrying, and people do worry, about what's coming next. So what do you think, guys? I really want to canvass public opinion on this. What is your personal belief on, you know, the purpose of life? Do you think that there is a possibility that we could be living in a computer simulation, or have you got some other belief that you will stand by? One thing that I kind of have always chuckled to myself about is that I would love, you know, when I do eventually meet my end, for there to be some guy like stood there with a clipboard in the afterlife, maybe like by the pearly gates, or with a microphone, doing a quick question and answer session about all the things that you've wondered about in life. But that's just my kind of stupid notion of what I would like to happen after death. But there you go, guys. Getting a bit deep today, getting a bit thorough, but that's how we like to roll on this channel. So if you have enjoyed today's video, please offer me a comment in the comment section, because I'm dead curious about what other people think. Have you even considered this prospect? I'm sure that most people have at one time or another, so let me know your thoughts. And as always, thank you very much for standing by us, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. And that all that leaves me to say for today is thank you very much. I'm Forrest Power, and this has definitely been, wait for it, emotional.